My name is Yara Shafani, and I'm joining you from Toronto, Canada, as the Executive Director of Canadian Friends of Sabella. Thank you for joining us for the latest Kumi Now gathering, as we look at and advocate against the ongoing Nakba, an ongoing Nakba that is obvious in the ongoing attempts to kick Palestinians out of Sheikh Jarrah, and obvious in the ongoing destruction of Gaza. Before we start, I would like to remind you that this session is being broadcasted live on Facebook. So if you don't wish to appear, please turn off your video feed. We would also love it if you could quickly share one of the links that are being shared in the chat so that others may join. We are now inviting people from the audience to tell us how you're applying Kumi Now back in your community or are otherwise advocating for Palestine. If you have an idea or project you'd like to share for up to 5 minutes in a future meeting, please email us at kumi@kuminow.com. It is now time for our weekly activism survey. Mark, could you launch the poll? Please note that there are 3 questions, so make sure to scroll down to the third. So I'll give folks a few moments to fill that out. This week's poll is definitely harder than the one a few weeks back. I'm seeing some answers coming in, so that's perfect. Okay, great. I am going to end the poll and I'll share the results. And so thank you all for all the actions that you took last week. The answer for the second question, which is UN General Assembly Resolution 194 outlines which right, and the correct answer, which was the general response, was the right of those displaced by war to return to their homes. And then question number 3, what strategies does Israel use to silently transfer Palestinians from their lands? And the correct answer was, of course, all of the above and others. As we know, there are many strategies that Israel is consistently deploying to push Palestinians out of their land. So on that note, we hope that you will find today's gathering interesting and informative. I'd like to start by having everyone you'll be seeing today introduce themselves. We will start with Omar, and then Reem and Dr. Sabella. Omar, go ahead. Okay, we'll hop on over to Reem. Reem Haddad, welcome. Reem is a resident of Sheikh Jarrah. Thank you for being here with us.
Yes, thank you for having me here. Thank you so very much. My name, as you said, is Reem, and I am a member of one of the families who are under the threat of forcibly, being displaced from the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah.
Thank you so much, Reem. And Dr. Sabella, if you could just quickly introduce yourself.
I am Bernard Sabella. I'm the Executive Director of the Department of Service to Palestinian Refugees of the Middle East Council of Churches, located in Jerusalem. I have been previously a member of the Palestinian Parliament. I'm a member of the Palestinian National Council, and I'm a retired associate professor of sociology from both Bethlehem University and Al-Quds University. Thank you. I have a family. My wife Mary was a student counselor. She's retired now at Bethlehem University. My children, one works with the World Bank, one works with an international rights group from New York City, but she can work anywhere in the world. And she's now working from Jerusalem. And the third is working in Edinburgh with a medical inquiry committee into hospitals in Scotland. So we are pretty well engaged. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sabella, and thank you for being here with us today. We're going to go on to Reem. If you could give us an update on what's going on in Sheikh Jarrah.
Yes, as you might have heard that we've been having since May 2nd, like daily peaceful demonstrations in front of our homes that are, threatened to be, you know, uh, taken away from us. And actually, right now there are clashes between the soldiers and the peaceful demonstrators right in front of the main entrance to the neighborhood, because the neighborhood itself is now completely blocked. Nobody can enter, but only the people of the neighborhood. Anyone who wants to enter has to show ID, and if they're not from the neighborhood, they're not allowed to enter. But at the same time, settlers who don't live there uh, are allowed into the neighborhood without any form of showing. They don't need to show any identification, just for the fact that they're settlers. They just get in and get out as they wish. But us, the Palestinians who live there and who reside there, have to show ID every time we go in. And actually, we've been having also soldiers searching our cars and you know um, just making things difficult for us. And as I said, right now, last time I checked, before like I got into the meeting, there was 10 injuries from the clashes between the soldiers and the demonstrators, and it's still going on. So that's what's going on right now on the ground.
Thank you, Reem. And I just, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for all that you're doing, and for sending you and your family and all the families of Sheikh Jarrah lots of solidarity and all of our love.
Thank
Just
you.
one other question. So I had heard a few days ago that there was that a teenager had actually been killed in Sheikh Jarrah. Is that?
It's no, that's not accurate. What happened is there was an incident of an older man. I don't know his age, about in his 40s, that crashed into a bunch of soldiers who were standing at the checkpoint on the entrance of the neighborhood, and he was shot right away, and he was dead right away, like at the moment. As we've heard the news that 7 of the soldiers were injured, and 2 of them are in like had severe injuries. But
Okay.
it wasn't a teenager, no.
Okay. Okay. And this is essentially a checkpoint outside of Sheikh
Yes,
Jarrah
we're
that they set
actually,
up.
yes. We're actually living like in a completely military-based area, you can say. All entrances to the neighborhood are blocked with checkpoints, and there are soldiers on each checkpoint. And as I said, they check every person that enters and comes out of the neighborhood.
Thank you so much, Reem.
You're
And
welcome.
again, sending you all our strength, and our prayers are with the families
Thank
of Sheikh
you.
Jarrah.
Thank you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. So we'll now welcome Dr. Sabella, who is our special guest of the week. Dr. Sabella, welcome. I will say just quickly, if as Dr. Sabella is speaking, if you have any questions that come to mind, feel free to just type them into the chat box, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible during the Q&A. Dr. Sabella, take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. And I'll have to cover really 3 or 4 topics related to what we are going through at present. The first is Al Haram al Sharif, or the Aqsa Mosque. What is so unfortunate is that both Judaism and Islam, and this is unfortunate in my opinion, revere and respect the same holy sites. and it has become a tragedy under Israeli occupation. Why so? Because I think that when you look at the power relationship, you would see that the Israelis have decided that what is Jewish and Muslim belong only to Jewish. Example of that is the Rachel tomb in Bethlehem. Rachel tomb is respected actually by the three religious communities, and yet if you now go to Rachel tomb, it's very, very rare that you would see actually no Muslim worshippers are allowed into the Rachel tomb, which adjoins a mosque. So power, and you will find yourself in a tower, in really military tower. The same applies to Hebron, the city of the patriarchs, where you have the tombs of the patriarchs, and both Muslims and Jews respect the Ibrahimi mosque for different religious perspectives, different religious traditions, so to speak. And in the end, Israel really divided the mosque and took over part of the mosque for Jewish worshippers, even though the mosque itself is Muslim property. Now, when we come to Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, the problem really is that there is a status quo. And a status quo means, in my opinion, the opinion of others, is that you respect the right of a different religious community to the place. And friction has been boiling for over now since 1967 because uh, Jewish religious groups are entering the mosque, performing religious rites, and in the process provoking the Muslim worshippers. And there is there an imbalance of power again, because whenever the community is praying on the mosque, and the Israeli police or security, for whatever reason, deems it essential to go into the mosque ground, they do it. Now, they don't question whether there are provocations. They simply go back and say, well, it's the right of everybody to go into the place. And the Muslim position on that is that you are welcome to visit the mosque, but you are not welcome to perform religious rites. And this sensitivity and fear, I mean, one knowledgeable guy told me one time that even if we offer the Jewish religious group a room in the periphery of the mosque, that room will soon become a synagogue, and that synagogue will spread, and eventually, there will be a division for prayers for Jews and for Muslims on Muslims' third holiest site in Islam. So that has been a really, not simply a bone of contention, but really a place where you have always tensions because of the fear of Muslims and Palestinians that eventually the Israelis will take over the mosque and divide it. And it's a real fear. You talk about freedom of religion, yes, but at the same time, if I am going to go and pray in the Western Wall, I'm not going to be allowed. I'm not going to be allowed. If I'm going to pray in Cordova Mosque, I'm not going to be allowed as a Muslim, you know. So, yes, there are religious, I would say, attachments by Muslims, Jews, and even Christians. But should you translate these attachments into taking over, into sharing, into subdividing and dividing, and then you are going to end up nowhere. You are going to end up in communities confronting each other, not liking each other, and in the end, we are all going to have a problem. Now, to go to another topic, which is Sheikh Jarrah. Now, Sheikh Jarrah has two aspects, and I'm not going to go in depth into it. It has a legal status uh, um, uh, aspect, and it has a political status aspect. Now, the legal status is that in 1954, very quickly, the Jordanian government, together with UNRWA is United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, decided that there were families who became refugees out of West Jerusalem neighborhoods. And these families had no place to go. So between the Jordanian government and UNRWA, Jordan government, because Jordan was in control of that part of the city, which we call East Jerusalem, and they decided to build some 300 or 100 houses in the neighborhood of Sheikh Jarrah. Now, when they built these houses, it was the understanding that the people who live in these houses will eventually own these houses, ownership, and not simply rentiers. They are not simply renting because they didn't pay rent, they simply lived in the place. Now, 1967 war came, and all of a sudden, in the 90s, Jewish religious organizations discovered that there is supposedly a deed to the land where these houses are standing today. So they went to an Israeli court, and the Israeli court said, yes, yes, this land is yours. And therefore, the people who are living on this land are illegal rentiers or illegal owners of the houses in which they lived for 70 years. Now, there are many legal complexities in the issue. But the feeling we have when we visited with the church delegation initiated by Sabella on Friday is that really uh, uh, the owners of the Palestinian owners of these properties are having a very difficult time because they feel they are in a legal limbo. They really don't know what to do. And then they cry out for the Jordan government, for UNRWA, for the Palestinian Authority, please help us. And this legal aspect is very troublesome because, on the one hand, if you have a deed dating from the Middle Ages, and if you are Jewish and you go to an Israeli court, oh, the court would say, yes, the deed is right, irrespective whether it is a true deed, not true, whatever. Well, if you have a deed as a Palestinian from your home in 1948, West Jerusalem, and you go to an Israeli court, the Israeli court will simply tell you that you are an absentee present or present absentee by legal definition of the Israeli law, and therefore you are not entitled to the land, nor are you entitled to your home which your father or forefather have built in West Jerusalem. So clearly, you are talking about two different legal systems, really, in which the Palestinians feel at a loss, to put it bluntly. Now, on the political side of things, the residents of Sheikh Jarrah are hoping and praying that uh, 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 that it needs political. I don't like the word pressure because I know I work with some European parliamentarians and they are always using glove hands, not to talk about Canadian and US. They are using glove hands when it comes to asking the quote unquote poor Israelis to understand justice issues or to what's going to happen to these 100 people whose homes will who will be evicted from these homes. So there is some hope among some Palestinians, I'm not one of them, that political pressure applied in relations between governments and the government of Israel will eventually freeze the issue. I hope so. And therefore, the poor Palestinian residents in Sheikh Jarrah will go on living in their homes with uncertain consequences, if you wish. Now we come to Gaza, and I know I have another 5 minutes, possibly. We come to Gaza, and Gaza is a sad story, very sad story. You all follow the news. What concerns me really, as a Palestinian, as a human being, is that without treating the root cause of the conflict, which is continuing occupation, we are going to go nowhere. I'm upset that the US administration, even though I like the change there and I welcomed a new president, but I'm afraid that the US administration does not really give the needed push for justice and human rights in Palestine in particular. And this is concerning to me because unless really we work for a political solution in which Palestinians will exercise their right to statehood with East Jerusalem as their capital, living in peace and harmony with their Israeli neighbors, then we're going to continue to have these wars. 7 years of respite, 2014, 2021, reminds me of some 7 years of Pharaoh in the past, in the Bible. And now we are entering 7 years of turmoil. The good years, the bad years. And it's going to go on. It's going to go on. Now, when we speak to our colleagues in Gaza, and I'm sure you tweet, some of you are tweeted on Twitter and Facebook and so on, they clearly say that Gaza, the whole of Gaza, has been reduced to rubble. And being reduced to rubble, while at the same time there are some families who have been working to recoup and to rebuild from the 2014 military confrontation between Israel and Hamas, now they are back to square one. I would say the recent confrontation between Israel and Hamas have put Gaza back into primitive times. And it's very sad, very sad. They have shortages of water, shortages of electricity, shortages of medical supplies, shortages, a variety of shortages that are very basic commodities. And you hear very troubling stories about families that have been killed, who have vanished. And what do you do? Now, yes, there are victims on the Israeli side as well. And they are innocent victims. But whose responsibility is it not to perpetuate this cycle of creating newer and newer victims on the ground, whether in Gaza or in Israel? And my argument is very simple. It is the responsibility of the Israeli government to really look at its vision for non-peace and change it into a vision of peace. You cannot continue to control people. You cannot continue to occupy people. Now, I have heard an Israeli diplomat last week who said, but we are doing all kinds of peace deals with the Arab world. And we have good intentions. And I told him very bluntly, you can have peace with the whole world, Arab, Muslim, Hindu, whoever. But if you do not make peace with the Palestinians, you are not going to have genuine peace at all. So we are stuck. We are stuck. Where do we go from here? Unfortunately, international complacencies has not allowed us really to go forward. One time I heard a British lord who told me, we have had enough with you guys. I said, why? He said, your problem is 100 years old and it will never be resolved. So we don't have time for you. Yes, if the US, if Britain, if Canada, if Australia, if Japan, if India, if China, and so on, do not have time for making peace in the Holy Land, then are we destined, both Israelis and Palestinians, to continue with intermittent violence and conflict and confrontation, and to score points against each other, and to come out showing how weak morally Israel is and how strong morally Palestinians are, while in the end, we are all losers. We are all losers. I am speaking this with a heavy heart because I know from my family's experience that they have lost a home in Katamon, West Jerusalem. And while they were, they never forgot the home, at the same time, they never have a vengeful approach to those who lived in their property. Painful, painful. And yet, some people say we cannot accept whatever Israel does because it's an occupying power and because the whole land belongs really to Palestinians. This argument is a very difficult argument. I'm not going to go through it with it. But one thing I know, that unless the Israeli policymaker, politicians, develop a vision for peace and for ending their occupation of Palestinians, we are going to continue to deal with disastrous and horrific and horrible situations like the one Gaza people, Palestinians all over are living through at the moment, and Israelis, and Israelis. So the responsibility is with the Israeli government. I stop here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sabella. We really appreciate all the knowledge that you shared, and just you being here with us today. We do have some questions already, and just are encouraging anyone who has questions to please enter them into the chat. So the first question that we have, so someone who is asking, based on their visit in 2016, that Jewish folks were not allowed at the top of the Temple Mount because they may accidentally step in the Holy of Holies. When did this change and how could this be changed? Just have to unmute.
Well, this is a very a very long story. Actually, before 67, the religious Jewish community, Orthodox community, was not that much into Israeli politics and government. In fact, theologically, and I don't know much about this. I'm sure there are some theologians here. Theologically, the ultra-Orthodox Jews, and I'm not talking about Naturei Karta, I'm talking about the broader ultra-Orthodox community, did not believe that the state of Israel is a legitimate state. It was the 1967 war that changed that, because Israel won. Israel got to the quote unquote Temple Mount, Al-Aqsa Mosque, and therefore there was a willingness on some ultra-Orthodox communities to ride on the bandwagon and to join the Israeli government. And so this started to change the approach to the Aqsa Mosque and to the compound of the mosque. And now you have Jewish groups who teach their children, or Jewish religious Orthodox Jews, that the Temple Mount, quote unquote, okay, should be where the third temple should be rebuilt. And when you ask the kids, the ultra-Orthodox Jewish kids, so what do you want to do with the present mosque? They'll say, just destroy it. Just destroy it. So this is the kind of fear that make Palestinians and Muslims worried about the intentions of the religious Jews.
Thank you, Dr. Sabella. The second question is, what specific actions can Christians take to demonstrate solidarity with Palestine? And you'll have to unmute there.
Very quickly, I think that Christian presence in the Holy Land is very much an important presence. And therefore, the Christian community worldwide, or what remains of the Christian community worldwide, should really stand in solidarity, not simply with Palestinian Christians or Christians of the land, but also with the issues of justice, human rights, and hopefully when a Palestinian state is created, reconciliation, reconciliation, and coming with each other, joining each other, living side by side, you know. So we have to work towards a vision for peace that is based on justice. Very difficult to say at the moment, but there is no way out except with a vision for peace based on justice.
Thank you, Dr. Sabella. There is also a question about Hamas in Gaza. So just to preface, I will share that I think we need to always keep in mind when we're discussing Gaza, that Gaza situation is not a peaceful situation, right? Peace is not just the absence of violence. Violence exists in the blockade, in the very structures in Gaza. So when Israel doesn't allow food to enter Gaza, when they don't allow for medical aid, technology that would allow for cancer detection, cancer treatments, none of that is allowed in. Things that would allow the people of Gaza to build homes that are demolished are not allowed in, and the people of Gaza are not allowed out. And so I just want to preface when I read this question, just to kind of share that I think oftentimes the media frames the response to the blockade or the response to Israel's occupation as violent, and we forget how much the actual system in and of itself is a structure of violence. And as people of faith, it's really important that we are not only commenting or understanding peace as an absence of violence, but also understanding peace as being something that comes through justice and through love. And so through that, I will share this question that was asked, which is, Hamas had to expect the consequences of the rocket attack. Why are they doing this? So if you want to answer that question, Dr. Sabella, you can.
It's a very difficult question, very difficult question. Many of us Palestinians have opted for nonviolent resistance, nonviolent resistance to occupation. Hamas, on the other hand, believes that, I wouldn't say the only language, but one of the languages to be spoken to the Israelis is that of power and confrontation. and accordingly, they stock rockets, and whenever there is a situation like what happened in Jerusalem, Sheikh Jarrah, Al-Aqsa Mosque, they use that power, that rocket power, with consequences that are horrible, especially to Palestinians living in Gaza. But I will not agree with those who blame what is happening when Israeli planes and ships bombard Gaza, collapse buildings, kill families on Hamas. I cannot accept that. I will accept it if Israel has done the right thing by going to the peace process. But Israel has not done that. Absolutely not. And therefore, it has kept the embargo on Gaza. It has kept 2 million people in 212 square miles in a big prison, as my friends, my Christian friends in Gaza say. They say we are in a very big prison. And they have given the people of Gaza no way out. So, what do you do if you were in this similar situation? I am not at all a, you know, a sympathizer, to put it this way, with Hamas. I don't sympathize with Hamas, but I can understand the motive, because the root cause of what is happening is the continuing Israeli occupation. Yeah, Israel is more powerful. The damage that Israel has inflicted on the population of Gaza, on the infrastructure of Gaza, is no parallel to the damage that the rockets have done to Israel and Israelis. And it is a sorry mess. But where is the responsibility?
Thank you, Dr. Sabella. I also just really quickly, before Reem leaves, I just wanted to say in the chat, she typed something that I just want to read out in case folks may have missed it, which is that the refugee families in Sheikh Jarrah have come from all over the country, Haifa, Jaffa, and West Jerusalem, and the residents of the houses had to give up their UNRWA relief cards in return for their homes. So that's just a really important point before Reem leaves us. So thank you so much, Reem. We know you've got a lot to take on in this moment.
Yes, thank you for having me. Thank you so very much. And I'm open for any questions before I leave, if anyone has any question.
Wonderful. If anyone has a question for Reem about Sheikh Jarrah specifically or anything else, please go ahead and type it into the chat. So then the next question that I have, we've got one for you, Reem, is what can we do? Folks would like to know what we can do to support the families of Sheikh Jarrah.
Sure. For me as a resident, I would like each and every person in the world who knows about the case to raise awareness, to tell the people, to tell their community, to even write letters to governments to see if there's anything that they can do in order to stop this and put pressure on the Israelis to just stop what they're doing in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. So as individuals, just raise awareness, talk to your people, and write to your governments. And I know that's probably the most that anyone can do, and also pray for us.
Thank you, Reem, and you are always in our prayers. I will share, I know in Canada, the United Church, and I believe someone can possibly plug it into the chat, or I can, has a letter that they've written, an ecumenical letter with a direct link to that can allow you to send it to your MP. I believe there may be something similar in the US, so I'll try on the back end to look this up. But lots of the churches have written letter templates, so you can actually just use an existing letter template and share it with your member of parliament. Perfectly United Church's letter is in the chat, and if anyone else knows of letters that and direct actions people can take, please add it into the chat. So thank you so much, Reem.
Thank you and have an amazing day. Thanks.
Okay, so the next question I have here, someone is asking Dr. Sabella for your opinion specifically on the role of Canada in this situation. How can Canadians make a difference?
You know, at this stage, we, the ACT Alliance Forum in Palestine, are attempting to come up with with an appeal to help out with Gaza and also with the West Bank, East Jerusalem and the West Bank. And we are hoping that with, I mean, you know, the reconstruction efforts, and somebody asked, why does Europe, Canada, elsewhere have to pay again and again and again for infrastructure works in Gaza? And every time Israel destroys them. And in a sense, allow me here to say, the Israeli reaction is really punishment. Punishment. I am going to punish you. You dared to throw rockets at me, and I'm going to show you hell. So, so now what can Canada do? What can the churches do? Our partners from United Church in Canada have been forthcoming. They have written letters, advocacy. Some church partners in Australia have written to their government. I think it is important not simply to look at what can we do now, but we need a joint international effort to convince governments, in order to convince the Israeli government that it should go into the peace negotiations with some goodwill. And this is important advocacy. And I know there are very generous people in Canada, the USA, Europe, who will come forward to help rebuild and reconstruct Gaza. But one Gazan friend on Twitter told me that if it took us 7 years to rebuild after 2014, the harshness of the attacks and the devastation, complete devastation that we have seen in this present campaign, we will need at least another 20 years. What do you do with the road infrastructure? What do you do with the electricity infrastructure, with the water infrastructure, with housing? Enormous, enormous. Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to come out and do the... Now, that's why I always argue, without peace, without resolving the Israeli-Palestinian conflict once and for all, we're not going to go anywhere. You are generous, you are compassionate, and I know some Israelis who do not agree at all with their government policies, and they are as generous as you, they are as warm as you know, and yet the answer is not, I'll give you some, I will support you 5 years, 6 years from now, and then we are back to the same old square of confrontation and military power. So we need a solution, people. And the solution should come with advocacy, with your own governments, with your own churches, and do not belittle what Kumi, what Sabille, what church-related organizations are doing, because we are an important part in bringing about change and bringing about peace and bringing about justice in in safeguarding basic human rights, in providing dignity for the people of Gaza. Uh, uh, yes, we need to stand with the people of Gaza, and we need your governments to stand with the people of Gaza. So, so yes, you have a role. And if people say, you are a church related organization and it's not going to make a difference. No, you will make a difference. I mean, 12 people at the time of Jesus Christ made the whole worldwide difference. So why can't we, when we join together, mere, um, make, the difference needed to bring about justice, peace, and hopefully in the long run, reconciliation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sabella. I will ask one more question, which is someone is asking why the international community keeps bearing the cost of the damage done in Gaza after the offensive is ended, basically cleaning up Israel's mess and letting Israel get away with any cost to itself.
I don't know. I have spoken about international complacency before. I do not think it's fair to the European or American taxpayer that Europe comes in and foots the bill, so to speak. But this is happening. What else do you have? What other alternatives? Do you go to Saudi Arabia, ask them for help? They do give some help. Do you go to the United Arab Emirates? Do you go to the countries that have signed the Abraham Accord? Well, where do you go? Where do you go? Uh, 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 Remember, the Palestinian economy is a captive economy to Israel. We are a highly dependent economy on the Israeli economy. So we cannot generate in Palestine the economy needed for reconstruction. At a certain point, there was this dream of having Gaza into the Singapore of the Middle East. But I cannot imagine that dream if we have continuing Israeli occupation, if we have continuing blockade on Gaza. We have to find a way to end the blockade. We have to find a way to make peace. And I insist on peacemaking because otherwise we are stuck. No way, no exit. And we are all going to suffer. And Israel will go back to developing stronger and more powerful bombs. Hamas would go back to develop more efficient rockets. And so where do we go? Occupation continues, embargo continues, economic dependence continues. And now the problem is you don't have any goods, commodities coming into Gaza. So you starve the people in Gaza? So what do you do? If I were Europe, the US, Canada, Australia, I would say, well, listen, guys, I'll have to step in and do something about it. But don't use your taxpayers' money to pay. Bring in a vision for peace and justice. Do it. And this is the responsibility, in my opinion, and I'll stop here, of church-related organizations, of groups like your good selves, of individuals, of people who may not necessarily agree fully with the Palestinian narrative, but who understand that without putting the Palestinian narrative side by side of the Israeli narrative, if not in the perspective of the infractions and injustices suffered by the Palestinian people throughout 100 years, we will not be able to come to a point where we have peace and where we have eventual reconciliation. And we will go back to rocket attacks, to reprisals, very difficult and harsh reprisals by the Israelis, overkill tactics, and we are always back to square one. So we need peace, we need to go forward, and if we come out of this conflict without a serious drive to restart the peace negotiations, then we are at a loss. One last word, please do not forget the Sheikh Jarrah community. Do whatever you can. If you haven't already written to your government, write to them. The Sheikh Jarrah Legal Committee have done a good job at a fact sheet, legal fact sheet. I don't know if Omar has it from Sabil or Yara has it. So if you have it,
We have it, Dr. Sabella, and we will be sharing it.
excellent. A very, very precise synopsis of the legal situation that you
and
can share with your members of parliament, and you
and
can
not
share
only with the members of parliament, we're also we're focusing every week. We have a Kumi action, and today we're asking. We need to have to hear what the church leaders say. So
very good.
a campaign that Yara will be speaking, and we want to write to the Pope, and we're encouraging many people. I know a group, Pax Christi Italy, is helping us now in sending out the email letter from Italy to the Pope. We're also asking the World Council of Churches. We need to ask the Sheikh Jarrah. That's very important. We need to see what the church has to say. We know what Jesus has to say when it comes to Sheikh Jarrah and people who are oppressed. We want to hear also what the church leaders, how much in line are they with the message of Christ, the liberating message of Christ.
And finally, we can make a difference.
And we will make a difference,
Inshallah.
We have no other choice.
I am very sorry. I have to go to another meeting.
Thank you.
And
Thank
this,
you, Dr.
yes, thank you. And this COVID-19 has become a plague of Zoom meetings. So good luck on your next Zoom meeting. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sabella. We really appreciate you being here with us. And I hope that your day does not have too many more Zoom meetings scheduled this late in the evening for you. I will make a note here that one of the comments in the chat by Wendy was just sharing that, you know, we, with regards to this question, that we are all complicit if we're not doing our job to end the occupation. So if our tax dollars go towards rebuilding and humanitarian relief, it is our obligation and responsibility. And if we're not part of the solution, we are part of the problem, as there is no neutrality when dealing with injustice. And I think that that's a great way to move us into our action, because I think actions like what we're doing with Kumi now do make a difference in challenging our government's complicity. Thank you, Dr. Sabella. So today we have two options for actions. The first is our Kumi Now action, and the second is an urgent action addressing the ongoing violence in Sheikh Jarrah, Gaza, and all of Palestine and Israel. Ryan, could you please put these up on the screen? The options will also be shared in chat, and all of the text is available on the webpage for this gathering, also shared in the chat or accessible from kuminow.com homepage under Kumi Online Gathering section near the bottom of the page. So today's Kumi action, which you can see on the left, is to help raise awareness of Palestine by lobbying to name a street Free Palestine Street, or short of that, putting up a sign naming your driveway, hallway, classroom, or anything else after Palestine. Take a photo of your signs and share them with us and on social media. The second option is on the left, and this is, it's on the right, and is our urgent action, and asks you to send the recent Kairos Palestine statement to the World Council of Churches and the Vatican, asking them to ask all churches to preach and call for an end to evictions in Sheikh Jarrah and immediate end to all of the violence. So we'd like to ask you to spend some time against the ongoing Nakba and destruction in Palestine. All of the info that you need is also being shared in the chat. We'll give everyone 7 minutes to get started. During that time, you can use our chat to discuss if you'd like, but otherwise we'll listen to some music and come back in 7 minutes to finish up. If you think 7 minutes is too long, please let us know and we'll consider adjusting the time. Great, thank you. Thank you, everyone. I saw some people already made notes in the chat that they sent an email to World Council of Churches, so that's wonderful. And on that note, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. A link to a video of this gathering, along with all the links shared today, will be available on the Kumi Now website and on YouTube in a day or so, and will be shared in the next newsletter. You can subscribe to Kumi Now on YouTube and subscribe to our newsletter to make sure you receive them. We would greatly appreciate if you shared this amazing session with your friends and colleagues, as well as information about our future sessions. Next week, we will be looking at Israeli attempts to erase Palestinian history and culture and the efforts being made to preserve them. If you'd like to be reminded of the online gatherings an hour before they begin, you can register for email reminders at kuminow.com/online using the form at the bottom of the page. We hope to see you back here next week. Thank you again and good night.